Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. And finally the Barnyard pack is out. I am so excited, and we are going to start right with something for these adorable animals. And today we are actually going to build a multi-species habitat for the goat, the donkey and some free roaming chicken. And as you have seen, the video is a little bit longer than usual, simply because I built a whole barn which is incredibly detailed, and of course the habitat. I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about it quite soon. So let's get started. So finally the Barnyard pack got released on Tuesday this week. It will be Friday when I upload it, so right when the DLC dropped and I got home from work, I got right back to work, basically building something for these animals. And let me tell you, I was so excited to have this pack. If you have seen my little debate about the upcoming DLC, you know that I was wishing for a petting zoo DLC. And let me tell you, Planet Zoo did not disappoint. I know that many people are not that excited for this pack, simply because it is nothing like too special, nothing crazy with exotic animals, but honestly, it is a really basic pack, but it is so incredibly good. And the pack came with a little twist, because it is called an animal pack. It carries 7 habitat animals, but not a single exhibit animal. But we also got quite a bunch of building items. So that is something really interesting that Frontier never did before. They either released like building packs where there were 5 animals in total and then building pieces, or 8 animals and just a couple of building pieces, like just a plant in different varieties, and of course the little signs of the animals that we always get, and one statue. But this time we got even more, so that was really interesting. And honestly, the building pieces are really good. They are really simple, but they are designed incredible. I tried to use as many of the new pieces as I could in this video, so you will see pretty much all of them, I would say. There's only like a handful that I didn't use. And the animals are also so great. Personally, I might have chosen like the goat and the pig and the chicken in a different species of those. For example, for the goat, I would have loved like more of a pygmy goat, or for the chicken, something more fancy, if you know what I mean, these little fancy chickens that are extremely fluffy. So that would have been great. But other than that, I am really happy with the pigs that they did for the animals, and the models look so incredibly good. At first, I was a little bit skeptical when I first saw like the first teasers that we got and the first screenshots. I was actually a little bit sad, because the textures and the model itself didn't look as good as they do now. So I am incredibly relieved when I saw like the trailer, the official trailer, and the screenshots that some of the creators also got, like when they could release it a day before the actual launch. Some of them did already a little bit of a content and showing off the animals and the building pieces. And I was so relieved when I saw the showcase of one of the creators, and I actually got to see the animals in game. They are just so amazing. And the textures, especially of the alpaca and the sheep, which is like a completely different texture than we ever had before in the game, it's just incredible. And also the way that the fur, or you could say the wool, moves when the animal is like walking, it just looks so good. And also the babies. Have you seen the babies of these animals? They are so incredibly adorable. I could not handle myself when I saw them in the showcase. I was literally almost crying in front of my screen because they were so adorable. And I don't know, they are probably the cutest baby animals that we have in this game. I feel like most of the babies that we have are basically a shrunken version of the adult animal, but with the new animals, especially the goat, the sheep, and the cow, their babies just are so freaking adorable. I I don't know. I don't even know what to say anymore. They're just this extra level of cuteness, just this babyfication, if you could say, of these animals is so amazing. They are not like the adults, of course, you recognize the animal, but they just look like little babies, and it's just so adorable. I don't know. Probably everyone who plays this game loves animals, and especially loves baby animals. I mean, who doesn't? So you'll be really happy to see these animals in game if you haven't yet. So definitely go ahead, check out this pack, and definitely get it for your game, because if you're trying to build a realistic zoo, you just need to have a little petting zoo section. Or if you could even do like a petting zoo on its own without having like these crazy exotic animals and lions and elephants and stuff like that. Or you can also do like a really small zoo that doesn't have like crazy animals. So there's so many options with these. The models are amazing. You also get a lot of building pieces. So if you can't decide if you even want to get a animal pack or a building pack, just get the Barnyard DLC. I would say everyone who's starting with Planet Zoo and doesn't know which pack to get first, definitely get the Barnyard pack. I don't know, it's just the perfect starter DLC in my opinion. But let's stop the praising of this pack for a second and talk a little bit about the free update that we also got, which is the animal encounters or the interactions. So I am also really happy that we got these. I basically also said the exact same thing in my wishlist DLC, a petting zoo DLC, and having the guests interact with the animals. So what more could I wish for? But then there comes the big but. The animal encounters are nice to have, definitely, and they do look good, theoretically, if they would work properly. So there's my critique to the update, not the DLC, because it's not only for the DLC. We also have older animals. I believe they are all from the base game, but I'm not quite sure, that also have the animal encounters. So the interactions from the guest with the animals are definitely one-sided, so the animal is not really interacting with the guest, it's just standing there, and the guest is or are petting the animals, or like kneeling down and like trying to feed it or trying to pet it, and yeah, but when it comes to the actual encounters, sometimes it looks really weird because the guest is either stuck basically in the animal, or not really stuck in the animal, but it's like glitching through the animal sometimes, so that looks really weird. And what I also noticed is that for bigger animals like the donkey and the alpaca, the guest comes up to the side and like pets it on the back, which is a nice interaction. But I also saw the guests do the kneeling down interaction, which would be fitting for small animals like the chicken, or for example the lemur, who also has the animal encounter. But sometimes they do this also with bigger animals. So I saw them do it with the Highland cattle that we also got in this pack. I didn't see it in game yet because I didn't build anything for the cattle yet, but I saw this with another creator, and it looks just really weird when they are like kneeling down to the animal, but the animal is relatively big, so it looks weird, and sometimes they are also glitching inside the animal. And what I also saw personally in my game is that the guest is doing the kneeling down animation without an animal nearby. So that's also really weird if he's like trying to call over an animal so they can pet it, and then there's actually not an animal around. So that's not great, to say. Yeah, I know it's a little bit hard. I wish if Planet Zoo could fix it. That would be great. If they don't need to technically change the animation. The animation itself is good, but just the way they interact with the animal, or like from what position they interact, because I feel like especially the position makes a lot of difference if the interaction looks realistic or not. And maybe if the animal would also do a little bit like, I don't know, shaking when the guest is petting it, or when they are like kneeling down calling over the animal, like if it's looking at their hand, to look if they have food to give to them, something like that. Nothing crazy, just a little bit, so it doesn't look that one-sided from the guest itself. So all in all, it is a really great pack. I can definitely recommend getting it. And if Frontier will fix the animal encounter a little bit so it looks just a bit smoother and greater, then it would be an amazing update too. So let's start to talk a bit about the actual video that you are watching right now. We are not only here to talk about the DLC, but of course for this video and the habitat we are doing. And before I will tell you a bit more about the habitat itself, I want to tell you a bit about the plans that I have for the zoo, or for the next videos, to say it like this. So of course we got a barnyard pack, which is basically a petting zoo pack, and of course we are building a petting zoo for the Leuchensee Zoo. If you haven't seen my episodes about Tiki Town, that is what you can see a little bit in the background sometimes. So we stopped the Tiki Town project for a little bit, and we will start the petting zoo. And as I said, I feel like every zoo has a petting zoo, and since the Leuchensee Zoo is also a pretty big city zoo, I couldn't miss this opportunity to build a whole section just for the petting zoo animals. And my plans for this is that it is relatively nearly located to the entry, as it is often made like this, so that the parents and the kids can have some fun in the petting zoo section. And that's basically what I'm doing. So relatively close to the entrance, you will be able to entry the petting zoo section, and the petting zoo section will be themed like a barn, basically like a barnyard, fitting to the pack that we got. And the whole section will be made pretty kid friendly, because I feel like most petting zoos are especially made for kids often, or most of the visitors are parents with their kids. So I want to make this section really kid friendly, with playgrounds, with more colors. Like you can see, we are starting with a red barn. So it will be extremely kid friendly, with playgrounds and stuff like that, and these really cute animals that we have. So we will have multiple habitats for different kinds of animals. It will be all the barnyard animals, and then we will also have free roaming chicken and peafowls, because I feel like in every zoo there are also peafowls just running around living their best life. So why not also add them to this section? And as I said in the beginning, we are currently building for the goat, donkey and free roaming chicken. So why didn't I say that we are building for the chicken just like that? Simply because the chickens will have a designated coop somewhere else in this part of the zoo. And my plan was that the chickens can free roam throughout the whole petting zoo area. The area will be enclosed, so they cannot like break out of the zoo or like get into other sections of the zoo. They will only be able to roam around in the petting zoo area, same as the peafowls. And Of course, you cannot make really freely roaming animals because they wouldn't cross habitat barriers without getting packed up and shipped back to their habitat. So what my plan is that I will have different habitats in the zoo or in the petting zoo area, where I will also put down a handful of chickens, and then I will make basically like a free roaming habitat within the guest areas, like in between the habitats. I will basically make an invisible habitat for the chickens and peafowls, so it looks like they are roaming around. And since they would, like in real life, possibly also enter the habitats of other animals like the goats, donkeys, sheep, and whatnot, but they wouldn't do so in the game. So I decided to like cheat a little bit and just make it look like it by putting down chickens within the habitat and then also the free roaming chickens around. So it looks like they are basically all around the place. So that was my idea. So don't be confused if we don't really have like any special coop or anything for the chickens yet. They will get their little section. I also pre-built a little bit to show you, and I'm really excited to show you these things because I'm really proud of what I did for the chickens, but I don't want to spoil anything. The chickens will have their turn sometime this upcoming weeks. But yeah, this was my plan, and that's why it is like a relatively big multi-species habitat with all three of these animals. Now finally coming to what we are actually building in this video. As I said, we will be building the whole barn for the donkey and the goats that are the residents on one side, and on the other side there will be the Highland cattle. And the Highland cattle will also be the next animal or the next video. Normally I try to split up these multi-species buildings, like for example I did with the tropical house in Tiki Town, but this time I decided to put the whole barn in one video and then do the habitat, and in the next video we will do the habitat for the cattle and maybe something around the habitat. I will show you a bit more about those details. So as I said, I wanted to make the whole section really kid friendly, and I thought what else would be kid friendly? Just a simple red barn, which could have been right out of a cartoon. So I tried to make like a really simple red barn, which is divided into two sides, one for the donkey and the goat and the other side for the cattle. And when I was looking up for inspiration, I didn't even need to search for a long time, because obviously if you're looking for barns, you just get bombarded with red barns. So it didn't take me too long to see what I wanted to build. And I also was seeing pictures on how the barn or like the structure of the barn is made, so I tried to include that too. As you can see, these light wooden beams or light colored wooden beams, I tried to copy this, like it was almost like a blueprint on how to build up a barn. I tried to copy it as good as possible because I thought that these beams are basically all the time really visible in such barns. And so as I was aiming for realism, of course, I had to make also this like skeleton of the barn basically. And honestly, I am really pleased with the result. It also adds just so much detail to the inside of the barn if you're looking at it. And then also, of course, we have these little storages that you are seeing right now me doing on top of the animal like sleeping area. And they could be used to store like hay balls, like enrichment items and stuff like that. So I tried to incorporate those too. And I honestly forgot to make like the little storage area at the very back of the barn. So right as I was seeing the video while recording the voiceover, I realized that I forgot to make this one. So I will be doing that when I do the cattle. And also, once I finish the cattle habitat, I will also blueprint this whole thing, hopefully, and also upload it to the Steam Workshop. Sadly, I cannot blueprint the barn itself because it has more than 5,000 pieces. I feel like I used an unnecessary amount of building pieces when I was doing the walls with like these red wooden planks. So I feel like I could have planned this a little bit better so it wouldn't be that many building pieces, because 5,000 is a lot. So I don't really know how many pieces there are, because I have different groups within this building, because I wouldn't even be able to move the barn if I wanted to relocate it, if there would be more than, I believe, 4,000 pieces, and if it is more than 5,000 pieces, I believe you cannot blueprint it. So I will try to blueprint it as a habitat, so I will see how that works out, but I definitely want to upload it to the Steam Workshop, but as I said, only when I finish the cattle, and if I somehow can manage to blueprint the whole area, so basically the barn, the multi-species habitat, and also the cattle habitat. And I will of course tell you if I was able to upload it to the Steam Workshop, so you can check it out yourself and use it for your own petting zoo. And talking about the Steam Workshop, I will also upload basically my barnyard essentials for the goats and donkeys. Right as you are seeing this video, down in the description you will find a link to my little blueprint collection of different habitat essentials that I did myself, and also some fences and stuff like that. So you get like a whole little pack of different pieces that you can use. So you can definitely go ahead and check those out. And as I said, this habitat will also be a walkthrough habitat for the guests to really come up to the animals and being able to pet them. And since I'm also aiming for realism in all of my builds, I wanted to make this like double door entryway for the guests, because simply if there would be only like one door and like a guest would hold the door open, or it would just stay open, of course animals could escape. So to minimize the risk of animals escaping, there are always these double doors, and I wanted to make it look really cohesive with the normal habitat door that we have. So I tried to use two of these to make this little double door entry for the guests, and it actually works perfectly fine. So I was so pleased to find out that the guests can still entry the whole habitat. So basically the second door that the guest is actually passing, this is the real door to the habitat, and the first door that the guest is passing is actually not connected to the habitat. So it is just the door connected with the pathing, of course, but not really with the habitat, and it works just fine. It is also swinging open when the guest is walking past it, so that was incredibly easy, to be honest. I thought about doing something like a DIY new door, but it would have been a little bit hard to make it cohesive with the normal habitat door, because we do not have the exact same wood pieces, so it would have not looked exactly the same. But finding out it works perfectly fine just like that was really amazing. So I only had to make the fences, and then basically the little entry was finished. It was incredibly easy. So I can definitely recommend doing this, just to add like a hint of more realism to your zoo and to your habitat. And another idea I had to add more realism is to also do a little quiet zone for the animals. Since the humans can technically be a little bit stressful for the animals, especially if they are inside their habitat and they possibly cannot really escape the guests, because some people just don't really understand the body language and they try to pet the animal even though the animal doesn't really want to be pet. So I decided to make a little quiet zone for the animals in the walkthrough habitat. So if the animal is really not feeling like getting pet by the guests and is feeling a little stressed out, it can go over into the quiet zone where the guests wouldn't be allowed to entry. You will also later see me do like a little sign where it says that sometimes the animals don't want to be pet, so to be respectful of that and don't enter the quiet zone of the animals, so they can also have a little bit of relaxing time even though the petting zoo is open. Sadly, the guests in game don't really care about the sign, and I also tried to use this little trick by using the little red fence that you can see under the facility tab, I think it is. It's like this red fence that signals the guests to not pass, and there's this trick that if you really don't want guests to pass a certain area, so they don't walk through your, let's say, a fountain, for example, you can use this fence and lower it down beneath the ground level and the guests still won't pass it. But sadly, within the walkthrough habitat, they really do not care. So yeah, in game they do entry the quiet zone. I couldn't make a door to the quiet zone where the donkey could pass, but not the guests, simply because the donkey has an extremely big hitbox, to be honest, which is kind of confusing because this is a pretty new, or like the newest animal, and new animals normally have a really good like a traversable area, but honestly they need to have an entry of at least 3 meters wide to actually go through it, so that was a bummer. So yeah, but back to the topic, the guests sadly don't care, so they will entry the quiet zone, but just for like the aesthetics and for the realism itself, the guests like wouldn't be able to entry this, and so the animals can go back and relax a little bit and go back to the front of the exhibit if they feel like getting pet and fed, of course, by the guests. And of course we also have the little holding pens for each of the little like segments within the barn, so that technically for example, a highly pregnant animal or like an injured animal can be separated, so they are not walking in and out of the habitat, and they can be separated and kept away from the guests also. Then for the habitat itself, I made sure that the animals also have a lot of like opportunities to hide away from bad weather without going back into the big barn. So you see me having these little mini barns that the chickens and the goats can actually enter. I believe the pig and the sheep can too, but not the donkey and the alpaca. So I will also upload these to the Steam Workshop, by the way. And then I also have these little triangular sheds that I saw a lot of times when I was searching up for inspiration, especially for pigs. I saw these little triangular shaped sheds, but sadly the animals cannot enter them. Only the chickens can go inside, but sadly not the pig, even though the pig is technically small enough to perfectly fit in there. But in the game, just, yeah, they can't. So they are just for decorational and realism purposes. but I will also upload these to the Steam workshop. And then of course we have goats in this habitat, and what do goats always have in the habitats is a lot of like climbing frames and opportunities to climb and hop around. So I took a variety of inspiration of different style of playgrounds basically for the goats, so I tried to implement as many of those as possible. For example, I saw these really simple, just some logs that have like a really wide and flat top so that the goats can hop around on them. Then I also saw the big tractor tires used like half sunken into the ground so that the goats can also hop around on them. And we also got them with a barnyard pack, so obviously I had to do this too. Sadly, they cannot walk over it, so it's only decoration again, but the chickens can actually go on top of them. I've never seen the chickens actually go on top of them, but technically they can. And then I also tried to use just really simple wooden pieces to make smaller climbing frames. I didn't want to make anything like crazy or like that would look really expensive. I also tried to make it look relatively cheap, but not in a bad way, just how I typically see these things being made in petting zoos. And of course, the goats and the donkeys would eat a lot of the foliage that we would have in a habitat. So it is not really green. We have a couple of trees where I also DIY'd some little tree guards so that they don't really rub on it and destroy the bark of the tree and possibly also hurt the tree. And other than that, I used a lot of dry buffalo grass and other dry things, so to not make it look too plain, but also I couldn't really make it look really green because the goats would have eaten everything. And also because of their hoofs, I believe, they, by walking over the ground and eating the grass, they make the ground really like tight and compact, if you can say it like this. I don't know if this is the correct term, but because of that, normally grasses don't really grow in areas where goats and maybe also sheep, but I definitely know this with goats, where they are typically often around. So I also took that into consideration, that the habitat would be really plain and earthy, simply because of the reason that they eat it and that the earth would become really compact over time, and grass would have been just an extremely hard time growing in this area. And so if the habitat isn't really green, I normally use a lot of rocks and pebbles, but I had to be a little bit careful because the bigger animals of this pack, which are the cattle, the donkey and the alpaca, do have quite a hard of time passing these little pebbles. So I had to be careful where to place them so that the donkey could still access all of the areas, but the goat and the chicken have a perfectly fine traversable area for that. And we are almost at the very end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like how I designed this little walkthrough multi-species habitat for the start of this series for the petting zoo in my city zoo, Leuchensee Zoo. If you liked this video, please consider to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any videos that are coming up for the next part of the petting zoo. But don't leave this video yet, because there are more cinematic shots to come, so you can see a little bit more about the habitat, the cute animations from these animals, and also to see more of the details, because I haven't really shown you all the little details that I did within this build, because this would have been such an extremely long video if I would have. For example, I also added decals and just minor details to this habitat just to make like the final finishing touches, so don't you miss the cinematics to see those. And of course, don't forget to check out the Steam workshop to see my habitat essentials for the goats and the donkeys. I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, bye guys!